I thought maybe we could just dive right in and maybe just sort of, talk a little, maybe if you could talk a little bit about how you kind of got started down that path in terms of, I guess, free improvisation and sort of taking a little bit of a left turn from maybe, more of a schooled improvisation approach, like just playing on changes and stuff like that.
I think as a teenager, well, first of all, I've been playing the bass since I was 10. And then about around I was 13 or so, I got fascinated with electric bass, and I stopped playing for maybe a couple years. And then I think when I heard Hendrix, and I heard Hendrix a couple times live, I realized that feedback was very much like playing Ponticello on the bridge of the bow.
Yeah.
And then when I heard Mingus too, was like both those guys, I heard a real expressionistic kind of approach to playing music that resonated with me.
Yeah.
I felt I heard the freedom call of it, And then, in high school, when I was around 15, 16, 17, somewhere in there, I don't exactly remember precisely when, there was a very good flute player named Michael Harriton, and we liked to improvise together, and he had a radio show on the Pacifica station, KPFK, in Los Angeles, in North Hollywood, and his show was from 2 a.m. to 6 or something.
Right.
And we used to play, free improvised music on the radio, flute and bass. And that was the very first stuff I was doing. I had improvised, playing with bands, playing electric bass. But that's really what brought it back to playing acoustic bass. And then also, hearing early electronic music. I bought a CD of Poussier and Cage and others, and I was just fascinated by that world. And and around that time, I bought a multi-track. I had saved a little bit of money, and I bought myself a multi-track reel-to-reel tape recorder, and I started experimenting, playing around with that. Not knowing what I was doing, I was just experimenting with it. That's where it all kind of started to, come together, express, as something I wanted to do, continue. Yeah,
and so this was like late 60s, I guess, for you?
Yeah, late 60s,
right?
Yeah, like 60, 69, and then 70.
Well, man, one thing I would love, I was thinking maybe if you could just talk about some extended techniques and things that you've discovered on your own, or at least just dug into over all these years on the bass, because I think most people, at least the casual listener, when they think of upright bass, a very clear sonic picture comes into their mind, right. And one of the things that and also not only that, but also the role of what the instrument is as a foundational instrument. You lock in with the drums, play a groove, support the harmony, and that's great. I mean, we all love doing that, but one of the things that you've really, really just evolved with is the extended techniques. And I know there's an international community of bass players that dive into this stuff, but you're one of the preeminent voices in it, and I think it would be, there's a really vast sonic spectrum on the bass, and I think people just don't know. I mean, it's pretty big, at least it's gotten very big, at least over the past, 50 years.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, if there's anything that you want to talk about in terms of that, I think that would be pretty educational for our listeners. Okay.
Well, it's always come from kind of improvising, mm-hmm. and often stumbling on something that well, for example, like bitones of the bass is basically what that means is that when you press down a string, you press it's you push down on, let's say you press down on halfway down the string, there's another part, and you pluck the note, and usually you hear the part that's below where you hit that, where you push down the string. So
from where your finger to the bridge, where the string's vibrating from your finger to the bridge.
There's another length of string from your finger up to the nut that if you activate it, makes a sound. And I remember, as I said, I loved Hendrix's music, and I remember, playing, doing a hammer on, like at a B flat on the G string, and hearing the interval to Foxy Lady, augmented ninth, and I started playing. I said, "Damn, this is it. This is, there's another world of pitch here that I really wasn't aware of." I says, "But it's too bad it's so damn soft. If this, I can do some really fun stuff with it, but as soon as I play with anyone, it's gone."
Right.
And at the same time, I felt it was. I just, I still kept messing around with it, and also having studied with Bert Turetsky, he had this thing which he called contrary motion tremolo. And what that allowed him to do is to activate the string and the bitone simultaneously in a trill. Follow what I say? Follow what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I decided to I just started experimenting with it. I decided to, after I came back from New York, I decided to go back to. I came back to school about 1977, and I started working gigs in town. I was on the CETA program, and then around 1979, I went back to school. I was able to get grant money to go to school for free. So, as a result, I decided to. I took an electronic music course, and I worked with someone, and I started recording these extended techniques with, multiple microphones. Yeah. And some of those bitones, those things that were really soft, I could speak acoustically. So the recording process was able to allow me to make this kind of private, language that you wouldn't hear normally have a voice. Probably about 1982, I met a guitarist who was doing his graduate work at UCSD named Tom North, and very fascinating guy and an amazing guitarist. And he had developed a rig for his guitar where he had made a set of magnetic pickups that were strapped onto the scroll of his guitar and suspended over the nut. So he was able to amplify the guitar from two positions, sort of like what I how I was playing the bass. And he had it developed. He had figured out how to do this in a stereo configuration, and he made this most rich music. And I said, man, and he had heard me play. I said, man, I'd love to adapt that idea for the bass. He said, well, go ahead, steal the idea. And so I'm not a builder, but I found a guy named Tim Dowdy, and I paid him to make me a set of pickups that essentially did the same thing. So that just kind of worked out, and that became the first prototype of this amplification system that I've been, the ability to amplify and blow up the dynamics of the stuff has made all the difference in the world. It's given me the opportunity to make, what was only audible to myself and myself solo in a recording session, be able to speak to an audience. In 2000, I met up with my friend Kent McLagan, who's a brilliant guy, a fine bass player in his own right, and kind of a genius engineer. And he was also a bass maker. So he had all these affinities, skill sets that were ideal for, what I was trying to do. And so I had a gig in Denver and asked him, man, this sort of system I got now is fine, but it's really unstable, and I would love something that was built into the neck. He said, oh, that's an interesting problem. I said, do you think you could build something? He said, let me give it a try. And so over the course of, half a year, he came up with a prototype, and he said, I think we're ready to go. And so he changed the scene for me, because he made this really stable system that was essentially not visible, didn't change the weight of the bass, and made it really an integrated tool. So that really made it made my ability to research this stuff. I made it possible to take it to a next level. So it became less of a special effect that I would use sometimes to something that I could start to, for the first time, consider as an integrated instrument. And I was invited to apply to the Civitarella Ranieri in Umbria. It's like an arts colony, essentially. And I was able to, during that time, I started to map out this stuff in a serious way. And I just want to say that before that, and I have to go back, it's like, I played with these extended techniques. And, wait a minute. I lived in New York between 1986 and 2004. Mm-hmm. And this pickup stuff happened around 2002. But prior to that, around 2000, John Zorn had this book series called Arcana. Yeah. And he said, man, I would like you to write an article about your sound world. He said, I think it's important that we document what it is we do, because the critics aren't writing about it, and I think he thought it was important to document. So I wrote this article called A Personal Pedagogy. It was the first time that I really seriously began to really think about this in a really detailed way. And it's kind of funny that that process, which up to that point had been completely intuitive, it kind of changed everything. It gave me the opportunity to, by becoming conscious of it, it sort of gave me room in my head to start extending that world more. So, I mean, the fact that I made it, I actually documented and made it conscious, I think it actually, and then now, since I've been at UCSD, been teaching this stuff, it's made me more aware of what all the potentials are, both in terms of sonic potentials, but in terms of the musical application, what's the rhythmic, the harmonic weightings of these things? How would you describe, what are the, emotionally, what is its space? How do you describe it? How would you might notate it? And, and then sharing it with other folks, be it composers, it gives you, it's just given me more, a greater understanding and depth. Yeah. With it. So, now it's just like, now I'm thinking about, what the next step in this exploration is. I mean, when I have to say, when I had my unemployment money during the CETA program in the late '80s, late '70s, excuse me, I was able to put on a music festival with my unemployment money, and I brought Evan Parker. And hearing what Evan had done with this kind of solo polyphonic language for the saxophone, I found, I found it intensely inspiring.
Right.
And it really pointed, he was another person that gave me a green light to continue hearing and listening to, a lot of my, whether it was hearing Bar Phillips or hearing Charlie or hearing, and I don't think I've mentioned the impact of hearing Mingus. As a teenager, Mingus. Oh, I think I did mention him. I mean, Mingus was able to do, find a real emotional language with extended techniques. And in the end, that's really what I really wanted to connect with my, gut with sound. And in the end, just like, well, okay, emotion and mind, to be able to connect it to the musical language in a dimensional way. So, so ironically, as I've developed as an improviser, it's really led me to composition. I know this. There was a point in my life when I really thought timbre was the new harmony. I thought timbre was the driving force. Timbre and rhythm was the driving force in music, and what was new in music.
Right.
And there were a lot of people who were exploring extended techniques on their instrument, trying to create integrated language with it. And I people like, Robert Dick on the flute, in his Earl Howard as a saxophonist and electronic musician, and of course, Evan, Derek Bailey, all these, as soon as I start mentioning people, I just realize all the people I'm missing. And then, hearing Gary Guy, oh my God, really unparalleled virtuosity and but expressivity. And, it's sort of like this language of extended techniques. There were lots of people doing on all the instruments. And when I met, when I started to collaborate with Demon Maroney, that was a really significant thing, because I really saw what he was doing, and what I was interested in is having a lot of overlapping aspects. The impact of the recorded medium, you can't underestimate what that was.
Yeah.
And records in general, and hearing world music, and hearing music from Mongolia. I mean, just hearing pitch systems and rhythmic and sonic worlds, and different and ways of inflecting melody. I mean, it affected all of us.
Man, thanks so much for talking. I mean, that's
my pleasure.
I've taken plenty of your time, but I really, this is a great honor for me, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Cameron.
Hopefully we get to do it again sometime, man. I passed through California.
A Spacebomb production.